fracking no longer has the support of the UK government. This was the last statement by one of the ministers in charge a month or two ago. The ugly sister called acidisation is still permitted. And this is now the main problem in the wells at Horse Hill and possibly also at Brockham, both in Surrey. They say they're not going to frack, but they do say they're going to acidise by drilling along so-called limestone layers, where instead of applying a sand and water mix under very high pressure, you put in very strong hydrochloric acid to dissolve limestone layers, which you then create the voids from which you can then collect the oil or gas. Acidisation is really a form of fracking. If you take fracking in the broad sense of permanently altering the rock under the ground to get more oil and gas out, then acidisation is just a form of fracking. And the UK legal definitions and policy around fracking and acidisation are all incoherent. They're a complete mess. They're mutually contradictory. And what the government should adopt is our new definition of what stimulation of rocks comprises. And of course, this should be extended to a ban on acidisation as well as on fracking. So fracking is controversial because it alters the rock underground in a permanent manner with the aim of increasing its permeability, that is the ability for fluids to flow through it. And as a byproduct of that, because you've kind of opened up the rock under the ground to extract the oil or gas, you also create pathways for pollution from the same oil or gas or from the chemicals that you've put into the ground to do the fracking, and to allow the pollution to come up through faults and pre-existing pathways like that, to contaminate groundwater near the surface and thereby pollute your drinking water supplies. But the danger is once you've contaminated a groundwater source, there's no easy cure for it. You've wrecked an environmental resource potentially forever. The latest plans by UCOG, which are currently being considered by the Environment Agency, and I think by Surrey County Council, are to convert an existing horizontal well, which they drilled a couple of years ago, make it into a reinjection well, where they take the waste brine from what they've produced at Horse Hill and elsewhere in the Weald, and they pump it down into this well, which was a failure as an oil well. So they're now going to convert it into a reinjection well to get rid of this nasty polluting brine. Now, the bad thing about this, reinjection is a normal process in the oil industry because you create lots of brine that comes up with the oil. So you separate the two off, you take the oil away in tankers or pipelines, and then you're left with this brine, which you then put back into the ground. The trouble with Horse Hill is the depth at which all this is going to happen is extremely shallow, and you're only a couple of 100 meters below the valuable, clean groundwater resources of the Weald. So there's a great danger there that doing this reinjection, you could contaminate the groundwater in that area. Mm-hmm. And they're not only going to re-inject what they will produce at Horse Hill, they're going to import it by the lorry load from all over the Weald and use Horse Hill as a kind of dumping ground for re-injection of dirty, polluting, produced water, as it's called. That's the technical phrase. They're going to re-inject all that into the Horse Hill re-injection well. But it's well known in the industry, in fact, it's a normal process, that when you pump water into an injection well or brine, you trigger earthquakes. So even if you believe the story, which is now, I think, doesn't hold water, that the Newdigate earthquake swarm of 2018-19 was not related to the activities at Horse Hill, then you can almost be sure that if they start injecting water into the existing Horse Hill failed exploration well, using it as an injection well, you will trigger earthquakes.
Mm-hmm.
So on the grounds of the pollution of water supplies and the triggering of earthquakes, the Environment Agency really should refuse its approval for any future activity at Horse Hill.
What about at the global level in terms of climate change? Like, obviously we know that burning carbon emissions increases, the effects of climate change. But what about specifically at Horse Hill with the kind of exploration that's going on there?
Well, the claim is we will be producing indigenous oil, which will be used in Britain, and this will save on imports. It will save the shipping costs and the pollution that causes by importing foreign oil or gas. It's oil at Horse Hill, by the way, not gas. So that's their claim, and that we still need oil and gas while we transition towards a zero carbon future. But the fact is, without Horse Hill or any other onshore, or for that matter, offshore oil fields in the UK, we have enough oil supplies to see us out while we transition more rapidly towards zero carbon forms of energy. But I mean, we have to be out of producing oil and gas in the next 5 years, I would say. And we certainly should not be allowing any future exploration for new oil resources or production, which is in effect what Horse Hill is. And another byproduct of oil production is the production of methane from leaking wells. And methane is a far worse problem for the climate as a greenhouse gas than is carbon dioxide. Although it doesn't last so long because it breaks down into CO2 and water after 25 or 50 years. But in the short term, it's a much more serious greenhouse gas. And producing methane as a byproduct of oil and gas production is a very serious problem. Even more serious than just burning the oil and gas itself. So we have to act urgently on that. The problem of leaking methane, and methane even being flared off. They want the oil, they just flare off the gas, because they can't be bothered building the pipelines to collect it.
What's the one thing you would like to see change at a kind of national level in terms of this approach to?
Very simple. At the national level, there should be good subsidies for everyone to get rid of their gas-fired boilers and install heat pumps. I'm a great believer in heat pumps. Whether it's air to water, that is, you suck the heat out of the air, the big fan mounted in the big box on the side of your house, looks like an aircon unit. You take the energy, the free energy from the air, and you compress it, literally with a compressor inside the heat pump, and you pump you put it into hot water, which then flows through your rads. So you keep your existing rads, but instead of heating them with a gas-fired boiler, you heat them with a heat pump. So I think there should be subsidies, like there used to be for installing gas-fired boilers, in fact. There should be subsidies in Britain to help people convert gas-fired boilers to heat pumps. And at the same time, installation of new gas-fired boilers should be banned. Solar panels do work in Britain, and of course, at the national scale in Britain, offshore wind turbines are now the future, because of the economies of scale, and you can put them out of sight on Dogger Bank or in the Irish Sea or in the English Channel. You can have vast fields of wind turbines producing vast amounts of electricity, and they're out of sight of people. So there's no local sort of NIMBY style objections. And they work best at the big scale anyway.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Again, like it's been really interesting hearing at kind of the detailed level what's going on and how it all happens and how it works. So yeah, thank you so much. And
well, thank you for doing the cycle ride, and I hope you've raised. I suppose I should kick in something to your pot. Yeah.
If you can, that would be great.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
Okay, Simon. Nice talking to you.